do this just yet.
Impressive, but futile. You will know pain.
I will not be made a fool.
My spirit is spent.
So be it. Keep your precious sanity, my agent of chaos. You shall serve.
Hello guys, welcome back. This time it's going to be a Path of Exile 1 video. In case you are only interested in Path of Exile 2, don't worry, I'm still playing it. I still plan on creating many more builds for it, and of course updating my old ones, but you may want to skip this one. If however you are considering playing the upcoming mini league in Path of Exile 1 and not really sure what build to play, stick around and maybe this one is going to spark your interest. Now this is not going to be a build guide per se, but it will cover the most important things that you need to know if you plan on trying it out. If however you do feel the need of a more detailed build guide, let me know in the comments and I'll consider making one. To showcase this build, I'll be using Berimbolo the Slayer, a character that I have in the Settlers League. This is actually a character that I unskilled most of the Ascendancy points to better simulate a new Ascendancy. I left just one, which can be replicated through the use of Forbidden Flame or Flesh Jewels. Uh, Now this is a character with pretty good gear. It has stuff like Mage Blood and pretty expensive jewels. So I will be leaving a link to the POB for this character, but I will also be adding a budget version that it's more realistic for a new league scenario. That being said, let's get into the actual build. This build was created around one item. That item is One with Nothing, a unique small cluster jewel which allows you to allocate Hollow Palm Technique. Hollow Palm Technique gives you a lot of great stats like 40% more attack speed, you count as dual wielding, and adds a lot of flat physical damage per 10 dexterity, but you need to be under a cucumber. That means that you can't have any weapon or gloves equipped. If you can see here, I do have a weapon and gloves equipped, but I'm only using the gloves to level up gems. If you can see, um, I don't have the stat requirements for the gloves, so they don't count as actually being equipped, but the gems still get XP. And the weapon is actually the Dancing Dervish. If you are unfamiliar with how the Dancing Dervish works, is basically you hit a mob a few times and then you get Rampage. And while you have Rampage, you actually count as unarmed while still getting some bonuses from the Rampage buff. So this basically means that I don't actually have a weapon equipped, while I'm fighting monsters, and don't have gloves either. So I'm fully benefiting from all the buffs that Hollow Palm technique gives. So I will be getting a lot of physical damage. As you can see here, when I unequip the sword, I get a lot of physical damage. I can actually go inside a map and quickly showcase this. Let me just check. This seems like a nice map. Here we go. A nice cathedral. So if you can see, I still have my sword, but as soon as I start attacking, I actually lose the sword and I start attacking as unarmed. And I start stacking Rampage. In terms of ascendancies, there are quite a few options, but I chose to go with the Aristocrat, mainly because of the extra skill points. This build tends to be quite skill point hungry. So for skills, you will have to get Inherited Fortune, which you don't really have a choice. For the second one, we'll absolutely go for Fancy Foil because of the extra 30% dexterity. That's quite big for this build, as you can imagine. And the Very Welcome cannot be frozen. For the third skill, we will probably get Dreadful Attitude, 5% increased damage per 5 of your lowest attributes. It's quite huge. For reference, on the character Burn Bolo, I had around 150 int as my lower stat, so this is 150% increased damage. If you are using things like Astromantis, you can easily get to like 2 to 300 increased damage just from a skill point, which is quite big. For the fourth one, of course, we will get Family Heirlooms, not much of a choice. The +1 level 12 skill gems is nice to have, but not really that great. In terms of skill tree, you want to get Mage Bane for an easy suppress cap, as well as Precise Technique and Utmost Swiftness for obvious reasons. You want to get as many jewel slots as possible because those can be used for things like fluid motion, brutal restraint, and other jewels that can easily boost your damage by a lot. Split personality, of course, are very good. Dexterity and life. These might be expensive at the start of the league, but just get dexterity and whatever else you can find on it. The rest of the pathing is made so that the split personalities gives a lot of dexterity. We also take frenzy charges whenever they are available. And in terms of cluster jewels, this particular character uses voices, but voices are very expensive. You should probably aim for some physical damage based cluster jewels that have big dexterity attributes and or all resistances. Those are pretty good, and they will probably serve you just as well as these voices up to a higher level. Yeah. So let's quickly go over the skill gems and gear. For the weapon, we are using the Dancing Dervish, as I previously mentioned. This is a very cheap unique. Even with double corruption, you shouldn't have any trouble buying one. Even in a league start scenario, socket links don't matter for this, so don't bother linking it or buying one with linked sockets. What this weapon does is when you start attacking, it gives you rampage stacks. It starts to stack up rampage, and it also summons 2 swords that whirlwind around you. They use Cyclone as well. So you will want to socket this with gems that support those minions, things like Maim, Culling Strike, Blind, Minion Speed, Faster Attacks, and even Item Rarity will all benefit the Dervishes. So yeah, that's about it for the weapon. In terms of helms, we are using Devato's Devotion. There are alternatives, but I think that this is one of the best things you can use. This one has a very good corruption for Malediction. A simple uncorrupted one will do for league start. This is also pretty cheap, not much to say about it. The best things about it is the attack speed, chaos resistance, and of course the movement speed. Those are all very good stats. For the armor, we are using a crafted grasping mail. This is quite expensive to get. The main thing about this is the 1% increased attack speed per 25 dexterity. This boosts your attack speed by a lot. Um, this shouldn't be that expensive to make if you are making it through the Recombinator, but until you get the currency to craft one yourself, you will be using a brisk wrap, which is usually pretty cheap. I think it's actually more expensive to six likeness than it is to buy the actual armor. So yeah, that's about it for the armor. For the boots, we are using Relakish's Impatience. Um, when starting off, you probably won't have that many frenzy charges to begin with, so maybe going for something like Garukan's Flight or even some rare boots with a lot of resistances and dexterity might do pretty well for starters. For the belt, it's using a Mage Blood. Now, this is a very good belt because it helps you cap out your resistances. But I did play in Necro Settlers without one. You can just use a rare belt that has a lot of resistances. Maybe like Shaper's belt, I think. You can get the one with, or Hunter's belt with the increased dexterity. That's a very good option, but it might also be a bit expensive. But for starters, any rare belt with high resistances will do just fine. In terms of rings, obviously you want high dex, high life, and if you can't get synthesized implicits like increased dexterity, flat dexterity, or vulnerability on hit, those are pretty good. And for amulets, this is using a very expensive simplex amulet. Obviously, you can't get one in a league stock, but you will be uh, pretty well off with an Astromantis, especially since with the new Ascendancy, an Astromantis with Aristocrat Ascendancy is probably just as good as a simplex amulet in a normal Ascendancy. So yeah, that's about it for the gear. I will also be covering alternatives in the POB, so be sure to check that out. So, why should you play this build? Well, it's actually a really fun build. It's really easy to play. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, literally, you just right click and go forward in maps and stuff around you just dies. So it's a fast mapper. It's quite zoomy. It's strong at all levels of the game, and it's a knock beta unique build, which means that most gear pieces are going to be quite cheap. Even some of the best in slots pieces will be cheaper than the alternatives. So it can also do just about any map mod. For example, all the T17s I showcased in this video were actually unidentified maps. Of course, there are map mods that can break the build, but generally it's pretty rare that you find a map mod that you cannot run. In terms of cons, well, first con is that you actually need the one with nothing dual to make this build happen. It can't happen without it, so you can't actually start it from level 1. You will have to start with another build and work up some currency to buy the one with nothing dual and then start the build from that. So there's that. It can also get pretty boring. I mean, right-clicking through maps at some point can, of course, get boring. It's not the best for bossing. While it can do Ubers, I think I did most Ubers with this build. I definitely wouldn't recommend trying it because I mostly just did it to prove that it can do them. It's not built to kill Ubers, so if you want to do that, I probably would just go for another build. While it has not, doesn't really have any kind of problem killing normal bosses or like Wave 15 Simulacrum, it struggles with higher tier bosses like Ubers or deep delve bosses. And yeah, it can also be hard to cap your resistances. It's at some point it requires you to juggle a bit with equipment to make sure you have everything capped, and that's about it in terms of downsides. So I think that's pretty much it. I know I went through everything pretty fast, but don't worry, all the necessary info will also be covered in the POB link. Make sure you also check out the notes section because it will be covering things like alternative gear, stat priority, maybe alternatives for cluster jewels and things like that, many more stuff. Be sure to check it out. In terms of the POB, this is how the configuration is going to look like. No clickbaiting. I just added frenzy charges, fortified, and rage, as well as the bonuses that we will have from the aristocrat ascendancy. All the other things are left unchanged. This is how it's going to look like. I won't insist too much on the stats because you obviously won't have this gear for starters, but you can make a pretty good opinion about how it's going to look at the final stage. Um, and yeah, let me know in the comments if you have any questions or if you're planning on trying out this build. If you're not subbed to the channel and you enjoyed the content, make sure to drop a sub, leave a like as well, and thank you for watching. Bye.